Alright, let's create an apple that looks like this. So what we will do is we will start with a path, curve path. Then we can rotate it on the y-axis so it stands right up. Then we go into side view, and right now we just want to create this form of an apple. So slide these edges how you want the apple to look like, and you can select two vertices by holding shift and then right click and subdivide, and you get an extra vertice. And if you press on this little arrow here, we can go to item and select the vertex. And then because we want them to be centered on the y-axis, we can select this one and press 0 and do this 0. So now this is centered, those two, which is good. So when we have something like this, like an apple form, we want to add screw modifier on x-axis. And after this, we can right click and convert to mesh. Then we can tap into edit mode. And right now, the thing we want to do is we want to create the form of an apple. And we can select the vertex down here, but we'll notice that these vertices down here are not connected. So we will press A, M, and by distance. So right now, this vertex is connected. So we can select this up here or press O, and then we can select this vertex down here. We press G, Z, and now when we scroll our mouse wheel, we will affect a different number of vertices around. And the thing we want to make here is an indent like this. And on the bottom, we want to create the same indent like this. And then we also want to move these vertices around a little bit to create more apple-shaped form, because apples are not symmetrical. And you can play along with this as much as you want, and I will just move these a little bit around. And you can also change the shape or the scale of the circle. Something like that. I'm quite happy with it. Then I will add a subdivision surface modifier to make it more smooth. And I can also right click and shade out the smooth. Then we want to select the vertices in a line right here. Then we press Alt and left click to select them like this. Then we can select the edges or press 2 and then right click and mark seam. Then we can press A and unwrap. And if we go into this here and UV editor, we will be able to see that our apple is formed like this in the UV editor. So now we can create the shader. So we go into the shader editor and we create a new material. We scroll our mouse wheel a few times or press scroll mouse wheel and control to zoom in and out. So for the texture, from the base color and out, we want to create a noise texture. And in between the noise texture and the BSDF, we want to create a color ramp. And from the noise texture, we can press Ctrl T if you have Node Wrangler enabled. If you don't have Node Wrangler enabled, you can go to Edit and Preferences, and then Add-ons, and then search for Node Wrangler. And then we want to change this texture coordinate from generated to UV. And because we unwrapped it before with a seam, we will get this seam here. But this will also help us in the future when we are creating the lines of the apple. So for the noise texture, I will have this set to a larger number like 10. something. And then the detail I will turn up to around 7 and the roughness set to 1. So we will go to the mapping and we will change the scale of the Y quite much, maybe 3 like this. So right now we will start seeing that we have some lines going this way. Unfortunately, in the seam here, we have them go left and right, but from the other sides, it looks quite good. So right now, we can start adding color to this, and we can make it a red color, and we can add some yellow into there. And also, if you press this plus here, we can add another color, and just to make it easier for you to see, we can change the color to something with more contrast. And then if we change this position like this, we will see that the colors appear in different ways. So I suggest you looking at the reference image so you get the pattern that looks the most realistic. And I'm quite satisfied with how this looks, but not the color. So I will change the blue color to a red yellowish color, orange. Then I will select this, drag click like this, and then I will copy these two and Shift D and move them up. And then I will connect the vector to this mapping. And then in here, I will later change the color, but we need to connect these two. So I will add a mix color and put the color here and this color here, and then result in base color. And now when we change the colors of this one, we can change this to green and blue, and we move them together like this. We can see if we change this to close to 0, this will show, and if we show this to 1, this will show. You don't need to add this because this will just fade in with this one, but if you're not satisfied with this one, you can add another color to this one that you also think looks good, and you can change between them like this and see which one looks the best. And then we want to create more detail, so we can Shift D on this mix color and move it up. And we want to connect this one with this one. So instead of having this set to this, we can move this to this and put it like this. And up here, I will add another color ramp, and I will add another noise texture. And then I will also add another mapping node and texture coordinate node, but I will remove the texture coordinate node and just keep the mapping. And then I will connect the mapping with the texture coordinate. And then up here, I will change the scale to something like 50 or 48. And then the detail I will have set to like 15 and roughness set to 1. And in this little thing here, we want to move this up. And in here, we're going to add a wave texture. And we're going to have it from fac to factor. And from this, we're going to create a mapping and a separate texture coordinate. And I will set this to 1.5, and this to 3.3, and this to 2.2. And if we go back to this mix shader down here and put it to 50%, we will start seeing our result up here. So if you change this scale to very low, like close to 0, we will see that we have this pattern move closer to the points up here and down here. We can change this to something like 0.5, I think looks good. And of course, this color will also change how this looks. So we can change this to like red, and then we can change this to like yellowish, blue, And then also change how it looks. So we can change this to like yellow and move this closer. So we have something that looks like this. And right now, it all depends on what color you put in. So right now, look at the reference image and try to match this color as good as possible with the reference. And usually apples have a more yellowish tone up here and at the bottom. And it also has these yellow stripes going down because it's growing and it's expanding, and there it leaving some yellow stripes. You can also add some pink in there to make it look like a pink apple or more dark red if you want a darker apple. You see, if I slide this, it changes quite much. You can also add another like this and change this to maybe like green and move this a little closer. And now you get some green spots. You see, if you slide this together very close, you will see some more contrast between them. This looks horrible, but if we move them further away from each other, we get these small spots around the apple, which the apple usually have, and this will create another layer of detail, and you won't really think of it when you look at it, but it just looks better, right? We will move away from this section. We can select all of them like this and move them to the side. So we will have them there. And then we want to create another branch down here. So we can actually copy this mix color and put it like this. Then down here, we want to create another color ramp. And this is going to be white dots. And from this color ramp, I'm gonna create another noise pattern, which is called a Voronoi texture. Set to color. It's hard to pronounce. And then, of course, here I want to create the mapping and texture coordinate with Control T and UV to vector. And if we look here in the viewport, we can see it creates some sort of pattern. And we will change this to 2D and from F1 to smooth F1 like this. And then if we change the scale like this, we will see we get a lot of almost like round spots. And if we move this closer to each other like this, we will see we have some white small particles. So we've changed this up quite much. So we get a lot of small white dots. And now when we move this closer or further away from the white thing, we get more dots or less dots. And of course here, we're going to change color to a green yellowish color. And we can also here change the detail. So depending on the detail, you will also get a different result here. So you can slide this together or not. Like this. And I will turn down the detail and I will turn up the scale. Anyways, we can also now, as we did before, we can copy this and do it like this. And then we can put another color on this, like pink, and move it to the side like this. And then also create another mix color and put them together like this. And then in here, we can slide between these. So now when we slide between these, we get different results. So now because we have two different colors, we do get two different patterns. And if you want to, you can also take copy this texture and plug it into the mapping to get even more layer of detail. And I think the more details you add to the apple, the more realistic it's going to look. I think this looks a little bit too good, so I will change this. Maybe turn this brightness down. So now when we have the apple form, we're missing some details more, and that is some bump to the surface. So we will add a bump like this, and we can also move this far down like this. And then from height and down, we want to add a noise texture. And you see here, it almost looks like it's rotten right now. But when we start changing the detail and roughness, scale, we will start getting some different shape and forms. So I will have this to very low, or maybe not too low. We can set this to like 4 or something. And then we also change the strength here. And this is another way of creating roughness or different shape in the surface. We did this also by changing this like form of the apple by hand, but this is another way of creating those little changes in the surface with the shader. And in here you have full control over how much and how little it's going to shape the apple. And I think the lower number of scale here looks the best. And we can move this down a little bit, and this from this normal we can add another bump and add another noise texture here, and we can scale this up quite a lot, like to 130 or even more, like 180, and you will see that we get some very small bumps, and this looks quite bad. So of course we turn down the strength, and if we hold shift and hold left click, we can move them very slowly. And I will have this to set to very low. And if we zoom in, we can see that we get some small bumps here. And the distance we can turn down to like this. So when we have these small numbers on the scale and distance, we get this pattern right here. We can also change the distance of this other bump like this. So now in the shader editor, it looks like this. But we can also select it like this. And then we can right click. And in here, we can add join new frame. And then to make it easier later on, we can select this and change the color. And we can have this set to red because this was the red details. And this was the white dots. So we can turn this to white. And then we select this and have it set to black or something. So right now it's easier to see what actually does what. And we can also add a name to this up here, like white dots. So we get there. So we get the name there, and we can change the scale of the text. Right now, the only thing we want to add is some glossiness to this apple, so we can turn down the roughness. And now you will start seeing what the bump does. So if we turn this to very low, we can see we have these bumps here. So if you don't like how it looks, you can always turn this up and make these bumps less noticeable. You can turn up the roughness if you want to, and the roughness, oh, sorry, the detail and roughness, and you get a very much cleaner surface. So if you go back to this and turn up the roughness a little bit to something like 0.4, and in the red stripes up here, if you go to this color ramp, you can set this to contrast, and you will see that this behaves a little differently. So now, if I move this around, you can see it very clearly what is actually happening. And in the red stripes, I also forgot to change the wave texture from bands to rings and X to Y, and then sine to saw. Sorry for not explaining everything there at the end, but I just mixed around with the settings, and as you saw, you can get various different kind of shapes and different patterns and everything with just some minor details in these changes. And I think this is just a very cool way to create apples. And also, if you want to add more details, you can always copy a mixed shader like this and copy it in almost anywhere, either here or here, and you can add another layer, and I think it's awesome. But one thing we are missing is the stick up here to make it look more like an apple. In object mode, of course, I would go and select the cylinder, and I will move it up, and I would scale it down quite a lot, and then SZ to scale it up like this. Then I can move down. Then I can go into edit mode and add a few loop cuts like this. And then I can press left click and alt and select this. And then with this tool enabled, we can slide it like this. So now we have this sort of bend like this. And the top here, we can scale it up a little bit, and we can right click and shade out to smooth. So we have this material. I named it material for YouTube. We can press this one and copy it. So now we have material 0.1. And for this one, we will add the first material. And in here, instead of having like red sort of patterns, we can go in and change also the name to material stick and for YouTube. And then I will go in here and change the red things to like brown details like this. But we can also change the roughness here. And one thing that I think looks very good is change the bumps. And here we can turn up the strength quite a lot, as you see. And here we can also play along with this a little bit, so we get some deformation. Maybe the strength is too much. Okay, something like that. I think it looks quite good. And also we can move this up like this, and we can also control B and bevel it, and move this a little bit like this. This is all just playing around. So right there, we have created the apple, we have the texture, and we also have a stick. And I think this apples looks quite good from the side. I think you can agree. And of course, you can always change the colors and the roughness of the apple, and you get different results. But that's everything for this tutorial. And if you liked it, please give it a like. And if you want to see more, subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.